Hi, I'm Paul Rushworth-Brown, host of History Bards, Down Under Interviews, and Meet the Author in the US. And welcome to sunny Sydney. I'm here with a wonderful author, Carol Amorosi, and we're going to speak to her about her first novel in a series, Death on the Line. Welcome to the show, Carol.
Hello, glad to be here.
You mentioned that you started writing during COVID. So
I did.
Yeah. What on earth possessed you to sort of like just 1 minute, just say, right, I'm going to be an author?
My son, actually. I was living in Bavaria, Germany at the time, and he lives in England. And both of us were under fairly strict COVID lockdowns and couldn't really do much of anything. Went days without seeing anyone other than my husband. And my son called one day and he said, "Hey, Mom, I'm doing this writing course online. It's free. And each week there's a lecture, and then you write a chapter and share it with other people." And I thought, oh no, I don't think I could do that. What would I write about? And then, the whole bit about and share it with other people, meaning they'd be reading what I wrote. I said, oh, I don't know. And he says, "I dare you to join me." So the gauntlet was thrown and I did it. And people actually liked what I was writing. It was very rough at that point, but I wrote 20 chapters over the 20 weeks of the course, and then it just blossomed from there.
Okay, so how do you think you've changed as an author between that first novel in the series and the fifth?
My writing style. I don't have a background in writing. I did study English lit just for fun while I was at university, but it wasn't my degree. I just enjoyed it. So I did not have that writing background. So over time, my writing has improved. And in fact, after I finished the third book, Sign of Nine Stripes, I went back and re-edited Death on the Line just to get rid of passive constructions, things like that, just to make it tighter. I didn't change the story at all.
Yeah. So do you do your own editing?
I do the first round, and then I have beta readers, and then I hired a professional editor, and she's been amazing.
Great. It's a mystery thriller set on the frontiers of America. For those at home that don't know much about American history, do you just want to give us a brief synopsis of what the setting and what the story is about?
Okay. The first book starts off in 1763. And there's a border dispute between the colonies of Maryland and Pennsylvania. And for almost 80 years, there's skirmishes, fighting. The tax collectors from each of the colonies are insisting somebody lives in that colony and they're getting double taxed. Someone new arrives in, say, Maryland, and they're given a land grant and they go to set up a homestead. And somebody has a land grant from Pennsylvania for that same piece of land. So in 1763, they sent Charles Mason and Jeremiah Dixon, who were astronomers and surveyors, over, and they surveyed the line and determined exactly where the 40th parallel was, which had been the bone of contention up until that point.
He crossed the Atlantic chasing opportunity, not suspicion. In the wilds of colonial America, a young Scot joins a surveying expedition to draw a line that will shape history. But when a man is found dead, the land turns hostile, trust fractures, and Angus McKay finds himself standing on the wrong side of the truth. In a world where borders are dangerous and innocence is easily lost, how do you prove yourself when death is already on the line?
I mean, I'm not an expert on American history, but the time when it's set was when America or the US wasn't really the US. There were sort of individual states.
Well, yeah, it was 13 individual colonies that were formed for different reasons. Many of them religious, Catholic colonies, Quaker colonies, Anglican colonies. And they really did not work together much in the beginning. But over time, they united. And well, the rest of that is history, right?
Yeah. What sparked the idea for this novel?
I'd always been fascinated with the colonial American period. We spent many years living near Williamsburg, Jamestown, Yorktown, which are pretty much the roots of the colony of Virginia. Um, and then I moved out onto the frontier, what had been the frontier, and it's a whole different history out here. Much wilder, much more rugged, some real characters.
Okay.
So I've always had an interest in it.
Because
the reason it's, oh, go ahead.
so even today, when you sort of like go to these places, can you still feel sort of like remnants from that sort of like that sort of frontier period?
Yes, definitely. The names are all the same out here. The Christians, the Campbells, all the different families are all still here. In fact, the house that we bought out here was the carriage house for a colonial plantation back in the day.
Wow.
And in 1870 was converted to a house. So.
Wow. Okay. So Death on the Line, obviously, because it's a historical mystery thriller type thing. Tension seems to be a very important part of that. How did you establish that in sort of like the opening chapters?
Well, first of all, there's Angus himself. He's a bit of an outcast. He's a brilliant mathematician who's had a tough life. His past haunts him, and he's trying to make a life for himself in a world where he's not always accepted.
Okay, so Angus, the protagonist, he's a Scotsman.
Yes, he is the protagonist. Yes. Yeah.
Yes. And in the novel, do you look at sort of like any sort of like culture shock when he comes to America? I mean, what sort of changes does he have to go through?
Well, he's just come from London, where he had been spending his later years with his uncle. So Philadelphia kind of seems familiar to him, except that the buildings are new, they're not old. But it's once he leaves the city and he meets his first of the indigenous people, and they're not quite what he expects. But surprisingly, being of Scottish heritage, he can relate to a lot of their beliefs. And that comes as a bit of a surprise to him because he's always heard the stories of savages, and he finds that they're not. And some of their beliefs, like ownership of the land, are aligned with the Scots.
Yeah. I mean, I know in Australia, if we start writing about First Nations people, we have to be very, very careful. We have to be very, very respectful and often speak to First Nations people, explain to them, what you're going to write and how you're going to write it. Did you need to go through any of that?
I did speak to some out here where I live right now. There are quite a bit of those with Cherokee heritage, and I spoke with them. I also relied on contemporary sources. Right before Mason and Dixon and Angus arrived in the colony, there was a slaughter of a bunch of Conestoga Indians out in western Pennsylvania. And Charles Mason's horrified by it. And he writes a good bit about it in his journal, trying to get his head around how people can hate another people so much that they would do something like that.
Yeah.
So I relied a lot on actual sources from the time. And I also spoke with people. I don't know if you have what we call sensitivity readers that go in and kind of check what you wrote, especially since it's not my story. But I try to treat the people with respect.
Yeah.
And I think that covers a lot, just showing them respect.
Yeah. Did you find anything about their culture that you went, wow?
Some of their things, I recently wrote a Substack post about it over Thanksgiving. I was looking at the history of Thanksgiving, and it suddenly dawned on me that the Native peoples practice gratitude throughout the year. And even in their daily lives, they wake up in the morning and thank the sun. There's a lot of those kind of rituals that I was just amazed by and would like to kind of incorporate some of that into my own life now,
Yeah.
rather than picking one day a year for that American holiday where we say Thanksgiving for
Yeah.
everything, but
Yeah.
to practice it on a smaller level, on a daily level instead. That
Yeah.
really struck me as I read about some of the rituals.
In 1937, life offered little mercy, and for Vesta Blahnik, each day felt like one more step toward losing everything she had ever known. On a struggling Minnesota farm, she worked from dawn until long after dark, holding together a home her father had already decided to leave behind. When he sold the farm without a word, Vesta was left with no money, no security, and nowhere to go. Her only lifeline came in the form of letters, promises of stability from a man she had never met. Desperate, she put her future in the hands of strangers, hoping the truth would be kinder than the world she was running from. But in North Carolina, Gordon Crenshaw faced a darkness of his own. A widower consumed by grief, confined to a state hospital and forgotten by the family who sent those letters in his name. When Vesta arrived, the promises collapsed. Two strangers, both abandoned in different ways, forced together by desperation, circumstance, and the simple need to survive. Now they must find a way to build a life from whatever pieces the world has left for them.
Do you think that Western, well, I'm just trying to think of the correct word here, but do you think non-First Nations people have a lot to learn from? I mean, for in Australia, First Nations people have been living on this continent for over 60,000 years, and we're still sort of like battling with issues with colonization that occurred a couple of centuries ago. Do you think we have something to learn in general from First Nations people?
I do. There are, I'm trying to think of some examples here, but they've been in this area near where I'm living now for about 20,000 years. And I really don't think that the colonists would have survived without their local knowledge. Now, some of the ones that stayed in the big cities like Philadelphia, they probably never really faced the indigenous people very often. And a lot of them, much later in time, are still buying into the myths, believing they're savage. That went on for centuries.
Yeah. I always find that with
today,
sorry.
I was just going to say, even today, there's still prejudice around.
Yeah. I mean, I find it interesting, no matter who you speak to in which country, but our species always seems to fear and want to do the wrong thing to another type of people that are different to them. It just seems to be a sort of like a common denominator. With all the authors and all the people that I speak to, if they bring First Nations culture into their story.
Two lives separated by decades. Two stories shaped by war, loss, and the search for something better. In 1943, Bernhard Lang is swept into the tide of World War II, a young man fighting to survive a world collapsing around him, until an unexpected ally shows him a life he never imagined. 22 years later, 12-year-old Joseph Holloman is drowning in a childhood no one should have to endure, alone, until he meets Frank Gardner, a quiet man with a past he rarely speaks of. But Frank carries a secret, one that reaches back to Bernhardt's war-scarred journey and forward into Joseph's desperate hope for escape. Across time, across trauma, across lives shaped by forces beyond their control, their stories collide in a moment that changes everything. Between the clouds and the river is where the past finally finds its voice and redemption finds its way home.
So
I understand that. And to be honest, I was afraid to do it. I thought, how can I write about a people I know nothing about? But I'm writing a frontier story. How could I not? You
yeah,
know, it's
yeah,
I can't just pretend they weren't here.
yeah, yeah. So because it is a mystery thriller, how do you keep readers on the edge of their seat?
I try to sprinkle clues throughout. Sometimes they're red herrings. Sometimes they are actual clues that you need to pay attention to. But I try to sprinkle little hints. I don't have any big dump where I give a lot of information. But just somebody says something or somebody finds something. Um, that the reader goes, I wonder if that's important.
Yeah.
So, and I try to
So
end the chapters on maybe not necessarily a cliffhanger, but maybe a change of some sort that keeps them,
yeah,
hooks them along and keeps them reading.
yeah. A lot of crime fiction writers, they usually want to have a character to blame. Your book seems more interested in responsibility. Why did you decide on that?
I don't know that it was a conscious decision in the beginning. I think that's how it unfolded as I was writing. I tend to be a bit of what we call a pantser. I don't have everything all plotted out when I start, which sometimes gets me into trouble. In fact, in one of my cultic books, I completely changed the criminal at the end because I realized he didn't do it.
Yeah,
So sometimes I've written myself into a corner.
yeah, right.
But I do
So that,
usually have an idea what the main theme is going to be and who and the murderer is and why.
okay.
And
So I mean, that's a huge change in setting from the Celtic area to the American frontier. Why did you change it?
when I finished the third book in the colonial series, I didn't have any ideas where to go next. When I wrote Death on the Line, the next two just kind of naturally unfolded while I was writing, but that didn't happen after I finished the third one. And we were living in Bavaria, Germany at that point, and the archaeologists had gotten through the German layers and the Roman layers down to the Iron Age Celts. And they've mined salt in that area for 7,000 years. So they were finding clothing and leather shoes and wood and all these things that normally degrade over time. So they were getting a really good look at how advanced that society really was, despite what the Romans wrote about them.
Yeah, right.
So,
Yeah, it's it's funny how sort of like history is told by the people in power or the power brokers.
yeah, well, history is written by the victors.
Yeah, and obviously not always correct.
Right.
So was there a character that became more complex or troubling than what you originally thought when you started writing them into the story?
And on the colonial series,
Yeah.
actually, a couple people. And when I first started, it was just a class project, and
Yeah.
I had never had any thoughts of publishing. But Angus really grew over the course of that book,
Yeah.
and especially over the next two, and became a much stronger character. And some of the others that I started off with just a minor little bit because I needed somebody to do something, they're still in there.
Yeah. Did you find it difficult, like being female? Did you find it difficult to write a character or write the personality and being of a character that was like a male Scotsman?
In a way, I mean, I'm obviously not a man, so I don't think like men, but I've read a lot of other books with male Scottish characters, and I have a few friends who are Scottish males. So I kind of picked a little bit here and there. I didn't pattern him off of one person, but
Yeah.
there's a little bit of a few people in there that I met.
Yeah. Yeah. What give me sort of like one or two personality traits that you taken from a Scottish friend and gave it to Angus?
Well, every one of them down the line is stubborn. And Angus is a bit stubborn. Once he's got an idea, he's not too willing to let it go sometimes.
Yeah.
So
A couple of years ago,
would definitely.
yeah. So a lot of crime novels are usually interested in the act of, the murder or whatever, whereas your novel, Death on the Line, to be more interested in the aftermath. Do you want to explain?
A lot of that was just because of the characters that I had in it. Angus was learning as he went. He'd always been put down for his lack of a proper education, but yet he had a brilliant mind, especially with logic and mathematics. And he really finds himself by having to prove he was not the murderer.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was very character driven through that part of it, of what he finds, how he feels. Then the sheriff who's convinced he did it and he's trying to prove otherwise, and even at one point gets frustrated about it.
Yeah. And when people read, after people read it, do you think they're going to have an unsettled feeling, or are they going to feel satisfied?
I'm hoping by the end they're satisfied. My initial goal with these was not to sit down and write a mystery, but to tell a story set back in time.
Yeah, right.
And I love the research. I love finding out about the period. And I decided on mystery because, one, it's what I like to read, but also there are plot points you have to hit, and it kept the story moving. Otherwise, I'd put every cool historical fact I learned in, and the book would be like this thick.
Yeah. Death on the Line to one question that asks the reader about themselves. What do you think it would be?
I think it would have to do with how a young man can shake off his past and prove himself and better himself along the way.
Okay. What do you think? What do you think after somebody closes the last page of the book? What's going to linger with the reader?
I'm hoping it's that they've learned some history.
Okay.
Because that's my whole mission. I hear people say, "Oh, I hate history. It's boring."
Yeah.
And I think it's just from learning the fact names and dates for exams, because history is about people.
Yeah.
And I hope that they take that away from it.
Yeah. And it's a great way to learn about, frontier America, and, in a fun way.
Mm-hmm.
I know that when I writing historical fiction, I sort of feel that that I'm going back in time myself. Did you feel that way?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I do. And my husband and I enjoy that period so much that when we were living over in Norfolk, which is on the East Coast of Virginia, we joined a historic reenactment group, the 7th Virginia, which is a historical group that actually fought in the American Revolution. And so we go around and with them reenacting battles.
Okay.
And we're in our 250th anniversary right now. So there's a lot going on. Every community wants to highlight whatever happened there 250 years ago. So
you get dressed up in all the gear and live in a tent?
I do. Yeah. And
How
I
many
sleep
days
in
does
one
it-
of those canvas wedge tents.
Okay. Carol, this is my favorite part of the interview, right? And it's where I ask you 10 quick fire questions. So the answers are usually one or two word answers. If you say something interesting, I'm going to ask you to sort of just explain it a little bit more. But talk about the first thing that comes to mind. All right.
Okay.
So, crime fiction or psychological fiction?
Crime fiction.
Plot first or character first?
Character.
A line you won't cross as a writer?
Changing history.
Okay. Sympathy for your antagonist? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. Silence or confrontation?
Silence.
Most difficult scene to write?
The romance scenes. I'd never set out to write a romance.
So is there romance in Death on the Line?
There's a little beginning of one, yes. It takes to few books before anything happens, but
Okay.
um,
Is there
I don't market them as romance, but there is a romantic element in there.
is there any naughty bits?
No.
Okay. Do you trust your characters, or would you trust them if they were real?
Most of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you believe people really change?
I believe you can.
Okay. One word you'd hope a reader uses to describe Death on the Line.
Fun. And that sounds weird for a murder mystery, but my whole brand is making history fun, and I want to write something the reader enjoys.
Yeah, and it's obvious they do after writing 5 books. So Carol, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. I wish you the very, very best with Death on the Line.
Well, thank you. I've really enjoyed being here. This has been a nice chat.